Hello, everyone. How's it going? Welcome. It's another Wednesday, so we're back. I'm streaming. Today is going to be a bit more chill. We're going to do co-working as I try out this other format where it's a little bit less me talking the whole time and a little bit more talk for a bit and then work and then talk for a bit. So, hello, adventure lies ahead. Thank you for being here. Lurking is great. The idea with this one is that I have some environments that I want to write and revise to get the rough draft of a environments book complete so that I can start doing revisions and then figuring out my timeline for publication. Bastion of Hope just came out this last week, so if you are watching here and you have not gone to check out Bastion of Hope, then I will prepare for you a post that you can go and look at so that you can investigate this for yourself. As a reminder, you can get Bastion of Hope and all the relevant PDFs from Patreon directly if you want to buy the post. It will be cheaper, but sales on the retailers are all good because then those retailers know that there's excitement and demand and then they support me, which is great. I have just this afternoon put up a post on Patreon that is a little bit of Bastion launch recap and then teasing a new project that I'm not quite ready to talk about on main, but for all paid members of the Patreon, you can go and kind of peek behind the curtain and get an early look at or early notice of a thing that I'm working on. So I'm very excited for that. I will have more on it soon, but what I can say publicly is that I've been searching for partners in publishing Daggerheart-compatible material, and I'll have news about that very soon. So that's the tease. Hello, Junk Rabbit. Thanks for being here. And that, I think, is going to be all of our announcement stuff, right? You can go to the same Patreon and check out that newest post. But now I think it is time to dig into some environments. My plan is to go for about an hour total here, so another 50 minutes of work, and then I have to get back to Drakkenheim. What we're going to do here is I've got a few environments. Nope, this one's done. Where I just have a concept on a list, and I want to start building it out into an actual environment. As a reminder, with all of our all of our Daggerheart compatible design streams, this video is not associated with Darrington Press or Critical Role, right? I was a freelancer working on Daggerheart projects, but I don't own the game and I don't speak for Darrington or Critical Role. What I'm doing here is just my own creation, my own opinions about Daggerheart using and then making things using the community gaming license. So that is that. Disclaimers disclaimed. Nope. Wrong thing. This is the disclaimer that can go away. So now we're going to dive in to some of this work. I'm going to scroll down. So if that is going to be unhappy for you, just look away for a few seconds. Starting now. Okay, so looks like I actually have more for these than I thought I did, but it's maybe not quite done. So that's a great place to start. Occupied Town. I am probably going to have another version of this environment in a Witherwild book that I have been working on, but I don't have any kind of timeline for when that book is going to go anywhere. So I think I want to move forward with having this version in this book, because I think then the Witherwild version will probably have some more specific Witherwild oriented things, right? So this is going to be a tier 1 social environment. Hello, Jaybird things. Yes, I'm working on environments today, but this is going to be a bit more co-working, body doubling-ish, so there may be some portions of the stream where I'm just typing away rather than talking the whole time with everybody here. So we have a very short description. That's not even the right thing, right? That's the description from Bandit Raid. So a small town under military occupation by a small town under military occupation that controls the flow of people and goods. Right, so this is our description for occupied town. These impulses are from the Bandit Raid, so this is going to be control surveil populace. Simmer tensions. Repress resistance. Control valuable assets and trade routes. Right, so why would you occupy a town? You want the things that people in that town make. You want to be able to conscript people. You want to intercept goods that come and go through that town, right? You want somewhere to quarter soldiers. These kinds of things are what we're looking at in terms of our features. So here down in features, we have martial law. The occupying force maintains a strict curfew and patrols the street. And a party attempting to go noticed must make a group, let's say group action roll. I think finesse is a great trait to suggest here, but I could see somebody where they say, oh, the trait I'm going to use for the action roll is presence, which is convincing and coordinating people in the town to look out for us so that we can move without being harassed by the patrols, right? That would be a group action roll where the final roll was presence versus I'm going to lead us to move stealthily would be a group action where the lead roll is finesse, right? The other traits get a little bit more tricky, but you never know. People are very inventive. We have an action, make an example here. Right, make an example, not make an example here. Once per session, if the GM holds more than 7 fear, the occupiers pull a local out of holding and have them publicly flogged. Gain 1d4 fear and reduce the simmering tensions count down by the same amount. This is a thing here. It's very funny that I wrote simmer tensions and then I already had a feature that was simmering tensions. I'm pretty sure I had not seen that, or if I did, it was very subconscious. So congratulations, my brain is still my brain. So, right, you make an example of somebody, you scare the populace, which increases fear, but it also, let's say advance, because that's more clear. Advance the simmering tensions countdown by the same amount. Right, and so when the PCs arrive in time, activate a dynamic countdown too. This is not a progress countdown or a consequence countdown. It is dynamic. It can move up or down. That is probably why I said it reduce instead of advance. I'm curious. So now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go look at the SRD and see what the SRD says about dynamic countdowns, because I actually don't remember. I know what text is in my head, but I don't know whether the kind of guidance or like style is different in the SRD, right? Because the SRD is its own document. Do, 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 do. So it does not look like the SRD has specific wording that about how to talk about a countdown that can go up and down. The core rulebook might, but we're not looking at the core rulebook while we're doing CGL material because we work from the SRD. Junkrabbit asks, you don't spend for make an example. I wouldn't say that I don't have it cost fear because it's only once per session. It's not something that GM can just use on a loop to gain infinite fear, right? It is all right, during this session, we're in the occupied town. I'm going to use make an example one time during this session. It gains me a little bit of fear. It advances simmering tensions, but I don't use it on loop. I could see making it be once per session spend 1 fear instead of if the GM holds more than 7 fear, right? Because that's another limiting factor on when you can use it. You can only make an example in the town when fear, basically there's already a lot of fear, right? People are already scared. People are scared. Someone does make an example, right? Somebody, but the GM is the one who's doing it, right? And then things get even worse. There is some chance in this move that if your fear is high enough, you actually don't get to gain all of that fear because you hit your cap. And so you get less utility out of that. Really what make an example is for is when you are at 8 or 9 fear and you want to ratchet things up, right? You want to go from 8 or 9 fear to probably 11 or 12, and you're going to emphasize how that raising of stakes, that raising of tensions, also progresses simmering tensions toward a thing, right? When this countdown triggers, a group of locals take violent action against their occupiers. Tell one player to roll their hope die. Unless the result is higher than the current number of fear held by the GM or the PCs intervene, the rebellious locals will invariably be hurt or killed in response, right? The idea here is that the locals are just not going to win in this situation. Now, maybe there's 10 fear and the character rolls a 12. Do we want to have specific text that says, right, if the result is is higher than the GM's current fear, then XYZ. If the roll is not higher, right? Because the PCs can intervene. The question is, how do I want to write about the way that they can? unless the PCs intervene, right? So I can add it there. I can add a more optimistic clause here. And make a move based on the results. Right, and now we're going to have this be 2 bullets. Let's do equal to or lower, just for clarity. Hello, Captain Cosmo. Yeah, so Jaybird Thing says also means it can trigger by a roll with fear, which would be fun, right? This is an action, which means that you do it as a GM move. You could do that on any roll with fear or a failure. And if you have 7 fear, if the GM has 7 fear and then there's a roll with fear, you then hit that threshold of 8 that will let you use the move. And that really tightly ties the escalation by the occupiers to this the particular move or action that the characters are taking, right? Something happens that raises the stakes or prompts the occupiers to take more violent action. Let's also do show of force action. Spend 2 fear to introduce. And this is basically make there be baddies, right? A group of 3 bladed guards, 1 bladed captain. We could do guards and a captain, right? We can do conscripts and a captain. Bladed guards are, I believe, standard adversaries. Where's my... Oh, I lost it. I'm just going to have the SRD up again. Yeah, bladed guards are standard. Archer guards are ranged. Head guard is leader. And then I have Arcanist guard in Menagerie of Mayhem #1. So I absolutely have the Arcanist guard listed here because why wouldn't I cross-promote my own stuff? Right, the busybody is also here. So alphabetically, it should be like this. We're going to do adversaries in italics, possibly bold, one or the other. I want to be able to flag my own work. So if in a environment stat block, I'm referencing other stuff of my own, I can do it this way. I may also need to start using symbols, right? Like here's that little dagger superscript symbol, and then have a key that says this is from book X or book Y. Or I do things like that, right? Where I reference the book specifically. But I don't need to determine that just yet. Captain Cosmo says, environments are such a great thing. I would use them in any other game I run as well. To which Jaybird's thing says, they're super fun. I know a few 5e GMs who are implementing them now just to streamline the prep. I'm so glad to hear this. This makes me extremely happy. Thank you for sharing that tidbit, Jaybird things. For me, I want environments to be that extra bit of structure that helps GMs in prep and in running games so that they are able to feel more confident drawing on and acting for, like kind of giving agency to the world around the characters. So this pleases me. Okay, so we're coming back down to show of force here. Right, 3 bladed guards and 1 head guard. This is head guard. And then we need to make sure that we're referencing it. Yep, head guard is the text there. Let's see, right, if you spend an additional fear, add an arcanist guard or archer guard, right? You can scale up the size and potency of this threat, right? It's like a kicker cost. That makes this move a 3 fear move, which is pretty substantial. And have the head guard take the spotlight. Enter at far range. Right, so they enter at far range. A lot of the summon minions or summon new adversaries moves are introduce them at close range so that they can show up, close, and attack. But what I want here is that, right, I'm thinking in like a TV show or whatever, that moment of you hear boots on the ground, shunk, 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 and you realize that there's a guard patrol or like a squad coming. Right? If the PCs wish to escape without being noticed, call for a group action roll, likely finesse. So with this move, you always know that you can just push a guard group into a situation. If we look at our battle point system, I realize that I'm just doing a normal stream here, not co-working, but that's fine. So 2 points for each standard. So 3 by 2 is 6 points. A leader is 3, so that's 9 points. A party of 3 gets 11 battle points. So this move as is right now, here, let me scroll down, thank you. 3 and 1, that's actually under budget for a party of 3. But battle points budget can be across an entire rest, not per scene. So I think this is probably fine as is. Things can increase the tensions, right? Or things can count this. Set a D6 dynamic countdown die at 6. When something happens to relieve tensions, or when the occupiers relax their hold on the town, increase the countdown dies value. Right? Reduce the dies value. 1 or more. I'm just being really clear here, right? I'm using more. I'm resisting the impulse to streamline, or I'm pushing sort of against that design guideline to streamline, instead to be clear. Now, in editing, I may find that that is not necessary, and I may push back towards streamlining. Right? So, because this is... Right, if I do this... What I think this means is that we're going to have a separate feature. Is the feature boiling over. When the simmering tension countdown triggers, we do this thing, right? Boom, boom. And what I do here is I'm going to move simmering tensions up to be a passive, or when the town is introduced. Right, because you could hear about a town that's under occupation, and then the GM puts that countdown on the table because those tensions already exist. So I think we could do it that way. That means we've got 1, 2 passives, simmering tensions and martial law. We've got make an example and show of force, and then we'll have boiling over and seize them. So I also have this as a like introduce adversaries thing. There's some overlap and redundancy here, but I don't hate having a reaction that is an escalation. Right? Instead of spend 2 fear, maybe this is spend 1 fear, because the player characters have taken more direct action that would have a natural result. Right? And one of the things in the GM guidance is when the PCs do something that would have obvious consequences, you make a move. So that creates, I think, more ludonarrative justification for a move like seize them to be cheaper in terms of fear costs. Thanks for stopping by, Jaybird. Thanks. See you around. So the other option is to have a different kind of reaction. Right? I could also see something like sorry, we're going to go up. This would be a passive about coordinating with the local resistance, right? I have friends everywhere. This is a reference to the TV show Andor. If you have not watched Andor, even if you are not a Star Wars fan, I think it is probably worth checking it out. For my money, Andor is probably one of my favorite contemporary anti-fascist works of fiction. right? Not something that's about anti-fascism in World War II or in Franco's Spain or in kind of pre-World War II. I've just been rewatching Indiana Jones movies, right? But Andor is made in the 2020s by people who have been living through this 21st century resurgence of fascism. And so I feel like it speaks perhaps more directly. It speaks more directly to me. But this is a quote that a member of the resistance says. But I think I want to twist this to you have friends everywhere, because this is about the PCs interacting with this resistance group. Convincing them to de-escalate could increase the value of the tensions countdown, but provoking them could decrease the value as they escalate their plans, accelerate their plans. Yeah, Captain Cosmos, I think, right, we have the New Unknown team is crowdfunding a science fiction RPG that is Daggerheart compatible right now. Jaybird Things, who is just here, has a science fiction campaign frame. It's definitely a thing that's on people's mind, and it's worth thinking about. Fantastic. Glad to hear it. Yeah, I'm just going to grab the link for the New Unknown to put it into chat if folks want to go and take a look at this project. Yeah, I saw Neon Odyssey. It's doing incredibly well, which I would say is probably not a surprise given how big the Crooked Moon campaign was, and given the marketing background of the creators of Legends of Avantris. I don't remember if they do the kind of American Oh, I need to check out the music. Thank you. That's a good reminder. I do love writing to kind of game soundtrack music. The closing credits song from the first Mass Effect is one of my favorite science fiction songs to write to on loop, because it's long enough that it loops more readily. Also in that category is things like On and On by Orbital from the Mortal Kombat soundtrack from the movie in the 90s. We can call that science fiction, science fantasy. That's not an argument I'm especially interested in having. To undermine so that's that. Right, so now we get into questions, right? Do the PCs join the resistance and support their efforts? What lengths are the townsfolk willing to go to in order to cast out their occupiers? Nope, only italics, please. I would like this to not be bold. Thank you. All right, so now we need Sablewood turned Age of Umbra. Sounds very cool, Captain Cosmos. right? How can we tell when tensions rise or fall? What factors in town do people use as a barometer for taking the measure of how keenly the occupation is being felt? This is once again me verging on just writing advice in my game design, right? Can we figure out a metonym to represent the overall state of the occupation, right? A part of the town that stands for the whole in terms of this tension, right? The axis of conflict between outright, like full on insurrection or violent resistance through total subjugation by the occupying force. So martial law is still going to be the first feature here because of alphabetization. And I think it makes things clearer. Right. Right. When you have an occupying force, sometimes the occupiers realize that they are the baddies. Not automatically, and not necessarily, but it's a thing worth considering. I say which, or I had have any of them. I replaced it with which of them because all of these prompts are always optional. And I would rather have a prompt be a little bit sharper because I know it's optional than have it be a little bit more blunt or bland with the expectation that some GMs will just ignore it. Right, so it's switching from, at least my mentality here is switching from a yes or no question to a non-yes or no question, right, where you have to give a specific answer. If grammatically which can be none, that's fine, doesn't matter. But I find that this phrasing is sharper to me, and so that's why I prefer it. What is the target? Who gets hurt? Or what collateral damage is there? Who gets hurt on accident? How do the occupiers crack down after? Okay, but now I think it's time to figure out what XYZ is going to be. Right, the Stints group succeeds in striking a blow against the occupiers. Just gonna take a drink here. the trick here is I'm thinking, okay, one or more of these results is going to lead to the GM gaining fear. If the result is higher, then the resistance group succeeds, but there will then be escalation. Right? I could borrow from something like Armor Astir or Brinkwood, Blood of Tyrants, and create more subsystems here, right? I could go into martial law or simmering tensions and add a clause that talks about like the occupier's strength, and that a success on boiling over reduces the occupier's strength. Some of this is going to be a question of what scale do I want this environment to take. Is one boiling over roll that succeeds by going over the current fear, is that enough to liberate the town? Or does it take like 3 of those, right? Rule of 3. Right? Because we could go this way. The resistance succeeds in striking a blow. The GM loses 3 fear, but then you make a hard move representing the occupier's retaliation. Right? The GM loses resources, but then makes a hard move. Some of this raises the question of how do we as designers want to frame the resource of fear vis-a-vis or in relation to a conflict that includes 2 sides of NPCs, right? We have the townsfolk and we have the occupiers. Neither of these are the player characters. To what degree does an escalation in tension between the 2 of them mean the fear is going up? Right? Do the occupiers represent the GM's forces? Well, not necessarily, right? The GM's relationship to the players is antagonistic in terms of being a facilitator and co-storyteller. But the GM here would also represent the townsfolk, whether they are militant or not. So we could do this, we could not do this, right? I think the other option would be reduce the occupier strength countdown by 1. And an occupier strength countdown at 3. The simmering tensions countdown. The trick here is if we create 2 countdowns in the same feature, there can be the potential for confusion. The other option would be to put this other countdown in martial law. Right. What I'm trying to balance here is providing enough resources for a GM to basically use this one environment to govern an entire story arc in a town, and being streamlined enough that a GM can use it without feeling like they're getting lost in the sauce, right? If an environment would take more than one full manuscript page laid out, there's a question of whether it's too wordy. The endgame environments that I have for Tier 4, those are probably the ones where they could be possibly more than one page and I'd feel okay with it, especially if they are maybe 3 manuscript pages total across 2 environments, because they're meant to be really big in scale. But let's take a look at where we are in total, right? We have martial law, simmering tensions, you have friends everywhere, make an example, show of force, boiling over, and seize them. We have 7 features. That's maybe 1 feature more than we need. So, do I drop show of force, one of the actions, or seize them, a reaction? Because those are the 2 that are the most redundant, in that there is any redundancy between them. I don't know. I think for now, I'm going to leave it. I don't know this is. Okay, that's what's happening. I'm just going to need to get rid of this formatting, because the formatting is going to go away when it goes to layout anyway. It can be nice to have a little bit, to have the structure feel a bit more like the manuscript pages. But because we are almost at the hour, I think instead of moving on, I'm just going to take a little bit longer of a look at what we have, right? So, who's snitched on the PCs? What reward is offered to citizens that help keep the peace? What really happens to them? Right. The joke here would be, what really happens to snitches is people would respond with snitches get stitches, but that's not necessarily the only option, right? An occupying force may be using informants, but they wouldn't have loyalty to any of those informants in the way that they would to the existing power structures that they're beholden to. And we might, you can have somebody who's stuck in the middle. They're doing, they're informing on their neighbors to get food or to get favorable treatment in something, or because somebody they love is in prison and they're trying to get them released, right? This is, I'd use the occupied town environment in Bastion of Hope when one of the other nations, right, when forces of another tyrant moved into Bastion and then occupied a border town, right? And in Bastion of Hope, we have the GM principle of show how precarity undermines solidarity, right? That people are pushed to the brink and make the choice to either hold back from joining a resistance movement or make the choice to assist the occupiers out of a sense of precarity and desperation. So that is our occupied town environment, at least for now. I'm going to scroll back up to the very top because I need to mark this as there is a draft. I have a rough draft of this. So we're going to have scrolling again. Fair warning. 3, 2, 1. Here we go. So occupied town as a social environment. There is a draft. So I'm going to go look at dense woods. And then I've got my tier 2 ones. I need to write Hallowed Cathedral, Obsidian Forest, and then let's say, right, I have drafts of, I think it might be Planar Invasion at this point, not Incursion. Divine Audience overlaps a little bit with Hallowed Cathedral, but not by too much. And then I have Fallen Citadel, which is like a demon fortress. So if I'm using all of these, right, 4, 11, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, then out of my 32 environments, I have to draft 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5, right? So I'm getting there, but not quite done. I also need to decide how much more art I want to commission, because if I have 32 environments and I fit, let's say 3 every spread, right? 2 on one page, 1 on another, then that's about 10 spreads. Do I want 10 pieces of art? Or can I do 1 page, or like 1 spread has 3 graphics or 3 environments. The next spread has 3 environments and a piece of art, or 2 environments and a piece of art, right? Filling out that. I've already commissioned some art, and then I have some stock art that I can use. But if this book is, right, if I'm planning to have it release in the summer, I might be able to reach out to especially artists I've already worked with and see if they'd be available to produce more work on like a 4 to 6 week timeline, so that I would still be able to get a book to lay out by as early as July and as late as September. Right? I have a lot of things going on. Some of of how much and how quickly I can do things will depend on Drakkenheim. Some will depend on this other thing that I have announced on, kind of teased on Patreon, but not publicly. And then some just based on what's happening with life. All of that said, I think that is going to be a stream for today. Thank you to Captain Cosmo, to Jaybird Things, Junk Rabbit, Adventure Lies Ahead, and everybody else who was hanging out, lurking, chatting, and or to folks who are watching on the VOD later on over on Twitch or on YouTube. This will be on YouTube tomorrow late morning for me, right? I'm on Central Time now. And then I will probably I'll do another stream next week. It might be like this. It might just be more kind of talking through and working. Sorry, Zephian. Yeah, you arrived just at the very end, but you'll be able to go back and look at the VOD or come back another time. And I'll hope to catch you during more of the meat of a stream some other time. Thanks so much for coming by. Hi also to Saga is great. So thanks to you and to Zephian for chatting for the first time here. I hope to see you on another stream some other time. Folks are always welcome to comment on the YouTube VODs of these if you have questions about things discussed in the stream. Otherwise, that will be all for today. I'm going to say farewell. Bye.